Hey everybody, hope everybody's having a great day. Today in this video I want to talk to you about the HatchingTime Quail Cage that I've gotten. This is a 3-story cage. You can only see the first two right now just so you can see my face for the moment, but we'll change that up. So I've had this cage for a little over a week now. It's about a week and a half. I wanted to talk to you about kind of a little bit of an early review and talk to you about some of the things that I really like and some of the things that maybe could be changed. It's kind of personal preference. It doesn't really hinder anything, but just a few minor things, really. So when I originally set this up, I was only going to have quail in the first two sections. I ended up putting quail in all three sections. So I have 24 quail that I kept over winter. I believe I was upwards around 50 before going into winter, and I just knew that, you know, for our egg production that we use here, I did not need that many. They hatch really fast, they grow out really fast. So, you know, our spring is usually about May here where I live, so I can hatch, you know, I can start putting quail in the incubator in like March, April time if I want to build my numbers back up. So I currently have 24, and these are all jumbo quail. I currently have 24 in this cage, and like I said, it's 3 stories high. I don't know if I would really go any more than 24. It seems to be a pretty good number. I originally had this 24, I had 12 in the top, 12 in the bottom just to see, and it's way too crowded with jumbo quail. So I'm going to first talk about the modifications that I made, and those are in another video that I'll have linked at the end. But where I live, it's really cold. We have a lot of nights that are, you know, 20s, teens, even below 0. And I was worried about the water freezing. I keep this in my garage, and I don't have my garage heated. It's you know, whatever the temperature is outside, it's just a couple degrees warmer inside the garage. So the first thing I did was this water tank that it comes with. I put a seed starting mat underneath of it to just keep the water tank itself from freezing. I think the seed starting mats are somewhere like 98 degrees, somewhere around there. So, you know, the bottom platform of the water tank is around, you know, whatever that temperature is. So ever since I've had this cage, we have had below freezing temperatures day and night. We have had some single digits, but it's mostly been in the teens and 20s this past week. So this water tank has not frozen yet using that seed starting mat. The other thing that I did was I got heat cord or heat wire, whatever you like to call it. It's basically the wire that you wrap around water lines to keep it from freezing, you know, if you have a crawl space, anything like that. I got a 25-foot coil of heat wire, and I was able to run the cable all the way around the water lines that run through the top cage, the middle cage, and the bottom cage. And I had enough to run on the outside water hose on the other side, where the water comes down out of the tank and goes into each section. I had enough to wrap that as well, and I had just a little bit left over that I was able to bring it up and just run it around the tank one time. So not only do I have the heat mat on the bottom, I also have the heat wire around the portion of the tank that, you know, kind of helps the sides. So, so far I have not had any water freeze yet, and so I'm happy with that. Looking at modifications, the next thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to bring the camera in here, are these feed trays. So when you look at these feed trays, you can see the length of them here. You have this little guard that goes over top, and this prevents them from flinging food out. The one thing about these guards is they hit on both sides. And when the quail actually eat a lot of the food, these guards don't fall down with the food. So one thing I am going to do, and this is going to be my third modification, I'm going to take one end of these guards, and I'm just going to take some side cutters, and I'm going to just clip the tabs off of one side. And then lay those back in there. And now, let me show you. There is just a tiny little bit of side-to-side room, but that'll allow that guard to fall with the feed. Because I noticed that I had to actually remove this guard, and I had to move the feed around and then set the guard back down to allow them to reach it. So as you can see, they stick their head out through these slots. You can see the birds coming out and eating. I really do like that. And I have not had any feed mess on the ground. So there's a little bit of feed that is in their dropping tray, but not very much. The old cage that I built, there was a tremendous amount of feed waste in the cage that I had built. It seemed like there was never a feeder that, that didn't prevent waste. I was a little bit skeptical having this one on the outside. I figured there was going to be feed all over the floor. There really has not. So that's actually a really great design with this guard on there. There was a time I took this guard out when I was going to throw some new feed in there. And just in the, 15 to 30 seconds that I had this guard out, they were flinging food everywhere. I mean, it was all over the floor. So this feeding system does work very nicely. The next thing I want to talk about that I really like with regards to the feeding and the watering, the little water nipples that they run in here in these little cups. My quail have never used these nipples before that hang from the top down, and they actually took to them really fast. The one thing I did is I took my pinky inside and I hit the nipple up so water was draining. They all kind of watched the water draining and fall into those cups, and they instantly went over, started picking at them, and started drinking. So there was no issue with that at all. They took to it really, really nice. The next thing that I really, really like about this is the plastic. And I'm going to take this off here so I can show you. So the plastic bottom, you can see it in there. It's supposed to be 1/2 by 1, I think, mesh. And as you can see, there's no real poop stuck on those bottom mesh at all. And it's very, very clean. All the poop seems to really be falling down, and there's no problems with poop stuck on their feet or stuck on the bottom. That is another thing that I really, really like. That I built, I used 1/2 by 1/2 metal, like a metal mesh screen, and poop got stuck on there all the time. It was eventually, once it dried and they kept stepping on it, it would break apart and fall through, but it was nowhere near as hygienic as this one is. The other thing that I really love is the bottom floor being plastic. So with the metal mesh, you always get little sharp spots where they scrape their feet, cut their feet. Bumblefoot was actually kind of common with the metal mesh flooring in the one that I had. I foresee this not having any issues with bumblefoot. I feel like this cage itself will almost eliminate bumblefoot. I'm sure it won't 100%, there's always anything that could happen, but when it comes to like their feet being scraped up by the floor, I don't really think that that's going to be an issue. So I think that that's going to save a lot of, time with if you, do medicate for bumblefoot, or if, you remove the infection itself, that'll pretty much virtually eliminate it. The next thing that I do like is the drip trays in here. They overhang the front and they overhang the back, and I'll bring this over and show you. The one thing I do want to mention is I have not cleaned these trays out in about 5 days, and I did that on purpose to make this video, just so you could see what like 5 days of waste buildup looked like in these pans. So in this top one, I have 8 quail, and I'm going to show you the top one. So as you can see, the waste pan here, it overhangs the back. So if they shot poop out the back, it's still going to fall down in there. And it's the same way on the front. But I'm going to pull this out. So this is 5 days of waste from 8 quail, which is not terrible. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how often you would have to, empty those pans based on the amount of birds that you have in here. The next part that I really like is the rollout, the egg rollout. Now, I left the eggs that I have for today in here just so you can see how they've come out. So there's none in the top rollout here, but down on the middle one, we've got some eggs there, and then down on the bottom, we've got some eggs there. Now in my old cage, I had to clean every single egg that I took out. They were usually always covered in poop because not all the poop would go down through the metal mesh. I also had a sandbox inside the cage that they could go in and play around in. The eggs were always dirty. These eggs are super clean. I have not had to really clean any poop off of a single egg yet, which is actually really, really nice and is a huge change. So, that in itself is a huge time saver. The next thing that I really, really like is this cage is on wheels. I can move it, I can push it anywhere I want it to go. I really like that as well. It's very, very light. It's not heavy at all. My last cage was a couple 100 pounds. Pretty much where it was at was where it was going to be. There was no real changing that. So there are a ton of, pros to having this cage. It is very, very hygienic. It saves a tremendous amount of feed. The other thing I used to have with my other cage was water was always everywhere. Water would always be in my drip pans, and then that would mix with the poop and the feed that was down there, and it stunk bad. I mean, it really stunk. After 2 days, you had to have it cleaned out because it smelled so bad. I have not had any water down in the drip trays at all. There's little kind of cups under the water nipples, and those cups catch any water drippings, and then they'll drink that water out of there. So there's really no water waste. So the biggest pro I can say to this cage, or about this cage from Hatching Time, is the hygienic nature of it. There's no more food waste. There's no water waste. All their waste falls through, and the floor stays clean. So this is by far the most hygienic way that I have kept my quail, and I'm very happy with that. So, talking about a couple of the cons, and these are by no means cons that would deter me from buying this. The first con is the 1/2x1 flooring. If the quail lays the egg perfectly sideways, so the long edge of the egg sits in the long part of the slot, it won't roll out. Not a big deal, but it kind of sits in that little groove, so it doesn't actually roll. And like I said, it's not a huge deal. If you just happen to look, you see an egg laying there, you just open a door and you grab it. It is by no means a big deal. And I'll take that all day long over having dirty eggs. Not a big deal, but it is something that does happen that you have to look out for. The next thing, like I said, these little feed guards, they do probably need trimmed, at least on mine. I'm not saying every model's this way, but mine was this way. And it's definitely worth trimming these so this can fall with the food, because then that just limits, like you have this half full of food, but sometimes the quail can't actually get it because this guard is still up at the top and the food's way down. So that is something that you have to look out for as well. The other thing that you have to look out for are the sides. So let me trim this here. The side of the cage sticks out a little bit further than the dripping tray, or the poop tray, dropping tray, whatever you want to call it. They will poop out the side and it will go on the floor. So if you're buying this to put in your home, in your basement, I would definitely put a mat down or something down, some plastic down around this, just for any poop that falls out on the side. It does happen. It's not a tremendous amount, but there is poop on my floor that I do clean up once it dries, and you know, it runs down the side. And I'll kind of show you here. You can kind of see it on the side of the dripping tray as it goes down through there. Again, not a huge deal, but it does happen. The next thing that I would say is a bit of a con, if you're looking to house a lot of birds, this is not an economical way to do it. Like I said, I have 24 birds in this 3-story quail cage. That is probably perfect for a lot of people who are just, you know, using it for your own use. But if you raise quail on a commercial level, or you want to, you know, get into selling eggs or hatching babies and sell them or anything like that, you would need a tremendous amount of these to house the amount of quail that you would probably need to do any of that. That leads into the next con, and that's price. So this cage here was around $500, which I purchased it myself. I used my own money and I bought it just because it's something I really wanted to try. $500 is kind of an expensive price to house 24 quail. The cage that I built was stacked 3 stories, and I could keep about 175 quail in that. And it cost me, I did have some of my own materials, but it cost me around $200, $250, somewhere around there to build it. So $250 to build the cage. I could have about 175 quail. The only thing that might offset that, and I haven't looked into this yet, is the amount of feed that I wasted and the amount of quail. Like I said, bumblefoot was a big problem. So, you know, the cost of treating that, fixing that, or if you're the person who calls quail, you know, for anything like that, you know, that's a lost piece of livestock, a lost animal, a lost bird, a lost pet, you know, whatever it is you do or use them for. So you're losing out there, and like I said, the cost of feed for the other one that you were losing out on. So I would have to look. I'm sure it's a minor offset, but you know, there still could be some offset. So again, I've had this for a week and a half. The price was high, but I love it. I can't say anything else other than I do love it because it is so hygienic. People do, I know, use them inside their homes. That's not something I would do just because, like I said, the poop on the floor, you know, whatever. But, and you still could have some smell. So you would definitely have to empty your dropping trays every day, every other day to keep down on that. But, yeah, that's kind of my honest review after having this for a week. The biggest con, like I said, price. But there's a lot of positives that do outweigh that price, so it's kind of all in what you're looking for. I will probably definitely add 2 more sections onto this in the spring to put some more quail in here, make it 5 stories high. And yeah, it's definitely a cage if you have the funds that you can spend on it. It's definitely nice. It definitely makes things easier. It makes feeding easier, it makes watering easier, and it makes taking care of their waste easier. So it's more of a accommodation versus the price. So you're paying for the accommodations of the cleanliness of the eggs, the savior of the feed and the water. So yeah, I would say that's kind of where you want to look at if you want to buy one of these is, you know, like I said, you're paying for the accommodation and ease. But hope you like this video. You know, maybe after a month or so, if I run across anything else, I'll make another one, let you guys know. Thanks.